The DNA Diaries, a page 256 library publication, a book authored by Denny Roberts Ameke, and read to you by Charlotte Mugisha. Story1.
Cloning and the Future. Chapter 8. The Safe House. Walls don't make you safe. They just keep the fear close enough to whisper in silence. End quote. Khalid Wahibi. The new residence wasn't a home. It was a safe house located in a quiet part of Entebbe, behind a gated compound lined with high electric fencing. No neighbors on either side, just silence and the faint buzz of unseen cameras following every step. When they arrived, Helen could barely keep her eyes open. Her body ached from the weeks of adrenaline and anguish, but her arms remained firm around Keon, who hadn't said much since the rescue. He just looked out through the car window as they passed the lake. The American Embassy's security team led them in without a word. They'd been briefed. The rooms were plain white walls, tightly curtained windows, and furniture that seemed more military than domestic. Yet for the first time in weeks, the place felt safe. Safety had a cost. Every morning, a different doctor would arrive. British accent, American accent, Indian accent, and so on. Men and women in white coats and blue gloves, walking in and out with clipboards and quiet eyes. They ran tests, collected samples, and on 3 separate occasions performed minor surgical removals, pulling what they called foreign implants from Keon's arm, hip, and neck. "He doesn't seem to feel pain," one of the doctors told Helen quietly. "He's just learned to hide it," she replied. Rebecca returned on one Thursday afternoon. Helen had been sipping tea at the dining table when the guards opened the gate to let in a black Range Rover with diplomatic plates. The door opened, and there she was, same posture, same look, same old boots. They didn't hug. They just stood quietly for a moment, looking at each other across the neatly tiled dining room, like survivors of the same storm. "You look tired," Rebecca said finally. "You look armed," Helen answered. They both almost smiled. That evening, Rebecca stood behind the double-glass observation window, while Keon sat in the adjoining room, sketching shapes with a pencil and whispering to himself. The boy paused once, glanced at the window, and then turned to draw again. "He knows you're here," Helen whispered beside her. "He always did," Rebecca replied. The dream. Later that night, Keon woke up from sleep without screaming, but looked scared. "He's coming," he said, sitting up in bed. "Not Daddy, another man." Helen tried to comfort him, stroking his back with her hands. "Keon, no one knows where we are," but he kept his gaze fixed on the wall. "They always know," he said without moving his head. The breach of security came 2 days later, not with helicopters and explosives, just a white van disguised as a delivery vehicle, which drove in through the main gate at lunchtime. The guards at the checkpoint were highly trained and skilled to expect trouble, but no one expected trouble in broad daylight. There were 4 men in the delivery van, armed, and they spoke Luganda. Their aim wasn't chaos, but precision. Get in, get the boy, and get out. It's clear they had no plans to die today. The first 2 men were neutralized near the security check area by the U.S. Special Forces commandos stationed discreetly behind the perimeter wall. The other 2 reached the side compound. One of them, tall, muscular, and fast, made it to the rear door before he was taken down by a silent shot from the guard positioned near the water tank. Inside the house, alarms blared. Helen rushed to the panic room, grabbing Keon's arm. The door closed and sealed itself behind them. They stayed in the dark for over an hour while the compound was being cleared and searched. When they were finally escorted out, the American security chief simply said they were close but would never succeed. Helen didn't ask questions. She just held her son tighter. 3 days after the incident, an envelope was delivered under special security escort to the compound. Inside were intelligence photographs, maps, and 2 heavily underlined names. One of them was familiar, a Chinese geneticist believed to have escaped from Kalangala. The second was a Ugandan citizen, Dr. Isaac Okumu from Gulu. Former biomedical lecturer who worked at Makerere University on neurodevelopment research before disappearing in 2017. Wisner, the CIA operative now stationed temporarily in Uganda, said, "We believe he was recruited to help localize Project Alpha's second phase. New data suggests he recently moved to Nairobi to coordinate the Phase 2 operations." Helen's throat tightened. "He was one of my lecturers. Very quiet and unintelligent doctor. Disappeared during a malaria project," they said. Rebecca looked at the map spread across the table. "Then Nairobi's not the end," she mumbled. "It's the starting point for Phase 2. Keon's quiet growth. As the days passed, Keon grew quieter, not detached, but more observant. He didn't resist the tests anymore. He asked fewer questions, and when the therapists came to speak with him, he responded calmly, sometimes even kindly, but always with a look, that same look James once had, like someone playing chess 20 moves ahead. "He's stabilizing," said one of the psychologists. "No," Helen countered. "He's choosing who to become." That night, Helen sat beside him as he dozed off. He whispered something before sleep took him. "Phase 2 won't start in a lab this time. It will start in minds." She didn't understand the words, but she wrote them down anyway. Rebecca was packing up to return to Ginger when the embassy summoned her for one last debrief. Wisner gave her a file. Inside were photos of a recent Nairobi surveillance. One image stood out, a rough picture of Dr. Okumu standing near a group of men, one of whom held an old photo of Keon. "They're preparing for something," Wisner said. "We don't know what, but if you're still with us, we may need you on the next mission." Rebecca closed the file. "I never left," she said, as she stared directly into his eyes.